Welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane Kay. Today I'm breaking down season 16, episode 10, The Beginning of the End. Christmas has just passed and it's early January and everyone has quarantined for Christmas, and it's Ari's 5th birthday and she wants the whole family together. So Robin throws her a birthday with the whole family there. And Cody says that everyone is able to get together since there are tests available, and Christine thinks that the tests will make it easier to hang out, but it won't fix everything. The family has a lot of frustration over Cody's orthodox COVID regimen, and a lot of the family are afraid and fed up with it. Everybody has gotten tested to be there, and Robin is happy that they've all agreed so they all can attend Ariella's party. Janelle is happy everyone can get up close and personal, and Cody says he's happy to have everyone together because this is the attention he wants Ariella to have. Cody is still leery because of the criticism from his older kids about his C19 management strategy. There's a flashback to an episode ago when Cody tells Gabe and Garrison, "You have rules and regulations for work. Why can't we have that for our family to stay healthy?" And Garrison responds, "Because we're a family. Why not just verbalize it and trust each other?" Cody says that's the problem, trust. Cody feels that he was getting so much disrespect that it ruined his holiday season. During confessional, Cody concludes that maybe, just maybe, some of this is about him refusing to go to Isabel's surgery, which was life-threatening, by the way. And when she woke up after surgery, her first words were a request for her dad. But Cody wasn't there, and he used his C19 regimen as an excuse. He felt like his C19 protocol also has something to do with the family's resentment of him. Also, the fact that he'd been away from Janelle's house quite a bit. I'd say we know it's more than quite a bit, as he's been shacked up at Robin's exclusively for 8 months. Those observations Cody has made about why there is resentment between him and some of the family are definitely the most self-aware observations I've heard from Cody in a long time. There's a scene of Cody with Ari as she blows out her candles, and you can see how in tune he is with his kids, how in tune he is with Ari, how loving and attentive, compared to the stark contrast of how he treats Janelle and Christine's kids. Cody says his job is to protect Ari, and his older kids need to realize his world no longer revolves around them once they are adults. His obligation is to his youngest minor children, and then to the children who decide to keep his rules and go to school. Those kids he can help out any way he can. I don't think his older kids believe Cody's world revolves around them. They just want to feel supported and loved and have some kind of reassurance, some connection. Regardless of whether they follow the CDC guidelines or Cody's regimen, they deserve love and support whether they're 18 or not. Cody makes it clear he is only willing to support his kids, adults or not, if everything is done according to his will. Cody becomes increasingly rigid because he's dying to maintain control, but the more unyielding he becomes, the less leadership he'll hold. The family will only follow him if he's reasonable and if he fosters an environment where they follow Cody's lead because there's mutual love and trust and respect and support. They won't blindly obey because otherwise he withholds love and affection and communication. And Cody uses that as a tool. When he is not obeyed by a kid or a wife in the family, then he withholds love, affection, support, communication, and he neglects his role as a husband and a father. And that's completely unacceptable. People should want to follow you as their leader because they have faith in you, they believe in you, they know that you're doing the right thing. But they shouldn't stand behind you if they believe that you're doing the wrong thing, and if you're using emotional neglect as a form of abuse to try and force them to take your way. It's really sad watching everything disintegrate, and Cody seems aware of the destruction, so I have to wonder if this is what he wants so he can be exclusively with his new family he has made with Robin, cleaved off from the rest of his wives and kids. Janelle explains that they never pushed their kids out the door at 18. And she says Cody used to encourage his kids to come home and to stay at home, even when they were older than 18. But now, because it doesn't suit Cody's agenda, he wants to push them out of the door at 18 with the idea that he's done all he can do for them as a father. Janelle points out that there are adult children at Robin's house that Cody doesn't push out, and Janelle says that's because they obey King Cody's rules. Cody says some kids are supportive while others aren't, and it feels like it's based on what the mothers are doing. One mother, which obviously he means Robin, has decided everyone will support him and will abide by the rules that Cody has put forth for COVID, or they will live elsewhere. Now, we see a scene of Ariel's birthday, and in Cody's family, they do birthday toasts for the birthday person where everyone goes around the room and toasts the birthday boy or birthday girl. And Christine thinks now that they figured out a safe way to get together, it would be great to do this every month, just like before the pandemic. Now, does this mean the family only got together as a united, one whole family together as a united front once a month pre-pandemic? This is so different from season 1 when they all lived together in Utah. Janelle feels good that they get to hang out, she says, because of the available testing, and Robin says she's hopeful for the future. But, dun dun dun, not for long. 3 days later, we find out that the sky has fallen, that her nanny and her nanny's husband are positive for C19. Robin laments that it was scary, and they just got everyone together. They were just able to do that. And she says that if it was just her and her kids doing Ari's party, the only point of exposure would be Cody when he leaves. But they got everyone together. So now there's a possibility everyone in the family is positive for C19. And it's because they got together. She doesn't want this to make it so they can't get together anymore at all. And when Robin told Cody, he wondered how the nanny could possibly get COVID since she follows Cody's guidelines word for word, and he feels that the virus is just a really scary thing. And Robin says this validates Cody that getting together really is too much of a risk. The whole family is getting tested for C19, and it's really ironic that the most paranoid and regimented family when it comes to the pandemic happens to be the family who brings C19 into the whole family. I hope the nanny and her husband are well, but I had to laugh. It's interesting that Christine and Janelle and all the other heretics in the family, by Cody's standards, have escaped C19 so far. Robin feels bad that it's coming from her household because she worked so hard to avoid this. Christine and Janelle both mention the irony that the exposure to C19 came from Robin and Cody's household. They don't follow Cody's mandates, they follow the CDC guidelines, and they've been shamed for it and emotionally neglected by Cody, yet no one has gotten sick. King Cody had trouble following the instructions of the spit test they take, and he says straws are meant for sucking, and he wasn't focusing, he wasn't thinking, and he sucked accidentally and got a lovely treat. He can't follow directions for a saliva test, but he wants to dictate his C19 mandates that are more valid than the CDC. Cody says since he couldn't follow the instructions, he would be surprised if his kids, Saul and Ari, could do it right. They take the test with Cody in the car, and they seem to handle it fine. It was just Cody that seemed to have a problem taking the spit test. Christine says she is happy it wasn't her or any of her kids that exposed everyone to C19 because there would be a lot of blaming her and pointing fingers, and I told you so's since she traveled during the pandemic and Cody has been holding that over her head. She said Cody would feel more vindicated if it were her or her kids that happened to get COVID. Janelle's afraid that Robin and Cody will retrench and not allow the family to get together as a whole again. Christine thinks this was Cody's worst fear, and now that it's happened, she thinks it will raise the fear, and she knows they'll never hang out at all together again. Cody doesn't want to stop getting together, but if someone gets sick following the extreme protocols he's created, he really doesn't know if getting together is a possibility anymore. He doesn't know what to do. Robin knows she hasn't done anything wrong, but she feels bad. Christine says things are bad between Cody and her, and she loved being there for Ari, but getting together is difficult. She loves that the kids all got together, but it was really hard for her to see Cody have functioning relationships with some of the other wives, and she doesn't need to see it. Christine says her girls tell her that Cody behaves differently when Christine isn't around. She feels it would be easier on everybody else if she wasn't there. This is sad because Christine raised all the kids as her own, and it feels to me like Cody shifts his mood around her, so she knows that if she removes herself when he is with the family or with her daughters, he will be more attentive and positive with them, and that is a form of manipulation. Christine is in confessional, and she is saying that there's a balance between saying too much and saying enough, and feeling like you have a voice. She hasn't known how much to say. She says last week they finished putting in her door to separate her loft bedroom that she uses as a workspace to make it private. And Christine starts tearing up as she's explaining this story, that as Cody is installing the door, he keeps mentioning over and over and over that the door is to keep the cat from getting into her inventory, from getting into her office. When it was over and they finished installing the door, Christine asked Cody if installing the door was just about keeping the cat out of the office. He kept mentioning that he's installing the door to make sure that the cat stays out of the room, and he mentioned it over and over and over. And Christine asks him if the door is really just about the cat, or is this door about Cody avoiding having intimacy with her? Cody tells Christine he isn't interested in a sexual relationship with her anymore. He said it's because he doesn't like her behavior and she'll have to be a good sister wife. And Christine says no intimacy doesn't work for her, and he said that lots of people have marriages without sex. After that, Christine went to bed alone and Cody stayed up working, and in the morning, he went downstairs, he made breakfast alone, and he left. Christine thinks it's over and she really doesn't know what to do, but she has no interest in a marriage with no intimacy. And Cody seems to be withholding sex as a manipulative tactic and a power move. He gave reasons of him not liking her behavior, meaning not obeying his rules, and said that she needs to be a better sister wife. Basically, he's saying, you'll get the privilege of sex with me if you fall in line, obey me, and kiss Robin's ass. We already know that Christine is like a sister wife to Janelle, and she seems neutral with Mary. Robin is the only wife he seems to be referring to here. I'm sure this is really painful for Christine, but freeing herself from this abuse, freeing herself from less than she deserves, is amazing. Christine says that it's not acceptable he'd be intimate with the other wives, but not with her. She can't accept no intimacy for the rest of her life, and it seems to me that Cody is doing this on purpose so that Christine is forced to leave. Let's remember here, we already know Cody's already downgraded Mary to a barely platonic friend status. And Janelle he can barely see because her and her kids follow CDC guidelines, and he said already in previous episodes, because of that, he doesn't feel like it's his house anymore, and he doesn't feel welcome. I really believe that we are seeing Cody and Robin use the pandemic as a way to alienate all the wives so he can be with the one wife he's in love with and her family. He feels like that's his home. He's been there 8 months, they cater to him, and he leads. He is intentionally finding ways to emotionally manipulate his wives, so eventually they leave of their own volition, and it would do far less damage and be far less painful if he told the truth and admitted that he wants to live monogamously with Robin rather than neglect and abuse people to cause this. It would hurt less and cause less damage to everyone involved, in my opinion. Christine said earlier, pre-pandemic, that they only got together as a whole family once a month, 12 times a year. So they can still do that, and Cody can live in peace with Robin and their kids, and the other sister wives and kids can live without the intentional abuse and emotional neglect and walking on eggshells he imposes because he wants to just be with Robin and he's miserable. Christine says that her heart is shattered, and that's really understandable. On their last anniversary, they came home and had no intimacy. They just fell asleep. And she's known for a while about this because Cody said a while ago, straight up, that he wasn't attracted to her. She thought it would improve, but she's not interested in a half marriage with no sex. And he made it clear it's based on how she behaves. Cody was visiting outside with Truly and Isabel. And as he was leaving, Christine talked to him. And they have had serious troubles in their marriage for 12 years, so it wasn't unexpected. But Christine told Cody that he is no longer allowed in her room since they aren't having sex. He says that a lot of people have romance-free marriages, but Christine refuses to do that. She tells him he can see the kids, but he can't stay the night. Cody doesn't know what it means or if it's a phase or an awakening. He wonders if it's a phase because she has told other wives and the adult kids that she has wanted to leave for years. Cody says that Christine tells him nothing special happens in her room, and that's because she has murdered their intimacy with betrayal. According to Cody, the betrayal is her telling other people in the family that she's threatening to leave him. He thinks it might pass. He feels betrayed because people constantly tell him Christine says she's leaving. He's dumbfounded, he says. He's surprised. He shouldn't be, but he's dumbfounded. There's a flashback to Christine discussing why she won't live in one big house with the whole family together. And she says, I like who I am now. And if everyone is for one big house and he isn't, she's going to speak louder because she will not live all under one roof again. She likes having her own house. She likes having her own space. She likes having her autonomy. Cody doesn't know how seriously to take Christine, and he says he needs to think about it. We'll find out shortly how serious Christine is. We find out that all of Robin's family tests negative. And Robin says that they all need to be diligent about being careful and that they're blessed that God is taking care of them. Christine and her kids traveled to St. George, Utah for her daughter McKelty's baby shower. And Christine says her relationship could use some distance right now, and she really wants to support McKelty. They wanted to accommodate everyone in the family's COVID C19 guidelines, but no one but Christine and her girls happened to be able to make it to the baby shower. Christine knows that Cody thinks her outlook and her kids' views on C19 are lax compared to Cody's standards. They follow the CDC guidelines and they followed all the CDC recommendations for an outdoor gathering to have this baby shower. He says to her, she feels like she's being completely responsible and she's right. She says, guess what? None of my kids or me have gotten sick, so they aren't being irresponsible at all. Christine says home life is stressful and it's really hard to be home or around Cody. It's nice to get away. Gwendolyn and Isabel know things are hard, but truly doesn't notice a difference for her. Cody is around just as much as he was before, and she hasn't asked why Cody really isn't around. If Christine is saying Cody is never around and that truly hasn't noticed a difference in her father coming around because it's the same as before, that would suggest that Cody wasn't seeing Truly that often, even pre-pandemic. Cody made such a big fuss over protecting his minor kids. He was referring to Saul and Ari, but I just want to point out that Truly is a minor too, and Savannah as well. I really would love to see Cody be as attentive to Truly and Savannah as he is to Saul and Ari. At some point, Truly and Savannah will see the difference in support and attention and attentiveness that they get from their father compared to Saul and Ari. And if Cody doesn't change his ways, they'll resent him big time. The fault doesn't lie at the feet of Janelle and Christine for not following his C19 guidelines or with the adult siblings who live at home. The fault doesn't lie with the pandemic. The fault lies with Cody Brown, and I know that his kids really don't deserve this. Christine says that she knows this is a period of transition for her, and she doesn't know what her life will look like in the future, but she definitely wants to leave Flagstaff. And a few weeks ago, she asked Cody not to stay in her room anymore. He was shocked and he said that they'd discuss it later. But Christine put her foot down and told him, no, you really aren't welcome in my bedroom anymore. You don't want to be there and I don't want you in there. She told him that there's no discussing it later, it's final. And she told him she really doesn't want him in her bed at all, ever. Christine thought about what it would mean if Cody had to pack all of his stuff, meaning that when he's over, rather than spending time with the girls and engaging with them, he'd be packing. So Christine decided to pack up all of his stuff and put it in the garage to let him know she's serious. Christine says that it was really heartbreaking to have his stuff everywhere as reminders, knowing he doesn't want her or love her. And he told Christine he'd take care of her, but he's not. He doesn't take care of her. And she promised herself after her last anniversary ended really sadly with no connection and no intimacy that would be her last anniversary with Cody ever. She wants to keep it normal looking as long as she can, and she doesn't know what to say to the kids. In confessional, she asked, what did I do so wrong? She always wanted a romantic marriage, and it's been so hard for so long. She feels like she doesn't have a choice but to put his stuff out because it really breaks her heart to see it or be around him and to watch him with Robin and Janelle, the wives he has better relationships with, and to see him with the kids. She's crying, she's totally devastated, and she calls this hell, and she wants to move where people want to be around her and they want to be around her kids. Next time that Cody comes by, he'll see that all his stuff is packed up in the garage and he'll find out that way that she's serious. Janelle breaks the news that Gabe and Garrison have C19. And Savannah and Janelle are about to go get tested. She's calm, she doesn't seem too worried, and Janelle is really practical and she's chilled. She lets everything roll off her back. And she has that same attitude with COVID, and I love it. There's no use getting yourself all worked up. And next we see Cody discover his boxes, and he says the weirdest thing happened, that he went out to the garage at Christine's and his stuff was all packed up. He guesses that he's been moved out of the house, but he doesn't know what to think about it. All he can say is that this is not something they discussed. He's frustrated by it. He came back again to Christine's another time, and he noticed more boxes of his stuff packed up. He says he guesses it might be time for him to talk to Christine about it. He declares that he's been moved out of his house. Christine says now that Cody doesn't stay over, she really feels like she can breathe and get grounded and get her mindset to a good place to settle independently. Cody doesn't know how he feels about this. That's about all he can say. He doesn't want to move the boxes yet, just in case He then says he didn't know she was this serious. In the past, she'd say stuff like this. She would threaten that she was going to do this all the time, but it didn't feel serious. And he really doesn't know what it all means. Christine says she doesn't know what the future holds. There are uncertainties, but Cody will see the kids still and leave and sleep elsewhere. And she seems sad, but she seemed genuinely relieved. And Cody tells the cameras, I think I need to talk to her about how serious she is before he decides how he feels. And he says he's not angry, but it appears to be a game. It might not be, he says, but he doesn't know. I'd say it's 100% crystal clear. This isn't some type of manipulation. This isn't a game. Christine is serious. But somehow Cody seems unsure. He says he doesn't know why, but he's ambivalent and he almost doesn't even care. Christine says that if it's a spiritual marriage strictly, then they spiritually release you and you go through the church. But Christine feels this is strictly between her and God. Cody says he's afraid of the karmic value divorce has, and it seems terrible and tragic, and his faith is anti-divorce, but that's hypocritical, and he knows that, and he isn't bothered by this. He knows he should be bothered, but he just isn't. He says his first thought is, this is my house, this is my stuff, we never discussed this. And the second thought he has is relief. Relief from the burden and the woe of a loveless marriage and the fear of the culpability for his behaviors and his actions and the things he's done wrong in this that have led to this. But he isn't talking about how he really feels because he does not know what that is right now. Next time, the Browns will sit down one-on-one with the host and get asked about the season's toughest moments. I'm interested to see how Robin responds to Christine leaving and how Cody spins it. Thanks everyone for watching Sister Wives with Mary Jane K. Please like, share, comment, or subscribe. See you next week.